Okay, so welcome to Charter Directory for April of 2022. We will go ahead and get started with our In Case You Missed It section. So we're jumping right into that today. There's been a few big things coming up, so we'll just make sure you're aware of those, and then we'll get into the rest of our agenda. The first thing we wanted to make you aware of is that the PBS station has their annual Writers and Illustrators contest going on right now. The themes are anyone can be a hero, and they're going to have, first, second, third place winners in grades K through 6. The deadline is April 15th, which is this Friday. So if that's something that you would like to invite your students to participate in, there is a link there that you can send out to them and see if you have any great writers and students who can earn some awards through the PBS Annual Writers and Illustrators Contest. We also wanted to make you aware that the Utah State Board of Education School Safety Center for our Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines is having a workshop. I know that's quite a mouthful. I think they've shortened it to SEATAG. So there is an upcoming SEATAG workshop. That is going to be on June 8th from 8 to 4 p.m. And so if you are interested in joining or getting more information about the SEATAG, which again is the Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines, make sure that you get information on that. At the bottom, there is a link to that, as well as information about Dr. Cornell, who will be helping with that workshop, and SEATAG altogether. Next is a reporting guideline we wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. If you are conducting mental health screenings in any form, you're required to notify the State Board of Education annually of the intention to use mental health screeners. And so those intentions to conduct mental health service screenings for the 22-23 school year are due May 1st. All of the information is there too, as well as the link you might need and some individuals you might need to reach out to if you have a question about any of that reporting information. Next, we also wanted to make sure that it was on your radar that if you accepted elementary and secondary school emergency relief or ESSER funds and or the Governor's Emergency Education Relief or the GEAR funds, that you're required to submit an annual report describing how the grant was used and the awarded funds during the performance period. So please make sure that you have that. It is due by May 10th at 5 p.m. and make sure that you're making that deadline because in the note it said if you fail to respond to that survey by the due date, that could result in corrective action and potential withholding of state funds. So again, if you have any questions on that, the link is here, as well as who to reach out to. For this one, it's Sarah Harward. Is there a question? Maybe not. All right. If there are any questions, feel free to stop me or throw them in chat, and we'll be happy to get to those for you. Next, we wanted to talk about just this last week, USBE passed R277124 and the potential distributions for the $10 million that's appropriated in Senate Bill 2 to be used for teacher bonuses for extra work assignments. They don't have it yet, but Financial Ops said they will be releasing a simple application for this as soon as possible. So again, be watching for that. That should be coming shortly. Last week, the State Board also approved R277489, which added language about the FullDay Kindergarten or FDK funds. And so as such, the FDK application is now open. That was sent out last week by Christine Elegante. That application is due on Friday, April 29th. So please make sure that you are filling that out. There's been a few different information meetings, and so if you need a copy of that, we have those copies. We can get that to you. Christine can get it to you if you have questions about it. I know I've spoken with a number of you about funding. And so FDK is for if you are going to be expanding and adding into your kindergarten options to additional classrooms. We did send out notices of OEK for those who received those funds last year. They are not adding any additional OEK funds. And so if you did not receive OEK funds last year, you will need to apply for FDK funds. If we have additional OEK funds that become available, as we're working through the schools that already received funding and checking how many classrooms are being run and that they're meeting those requirements of OEK, we will let you know. But at this point, we want to encourage everyone to apply for FDK funds if you don't have OEK funds coming already. Jamie, I see that you unmuted. Do you have a question on that? Maybe not. And I do see Hanifi asked if he can get a copy of that recording. Yes, I will make sure to send that to you. If anyone else wants one, just let me know or throw that in chat and we will get that copy to you. We recognize that there is not enough OEK and FDK funding to fund all of our full-day kindergarten classrooms. And so at this point, really, getting as many applications as we can in and showing that there is that need will help our USBE staff partners to be able to share that information when our next legislative session comes around and to hopefully get additional funding for full-day kindergarten. Again, if there are any questions, please let myself know or Christina Elegante, and we can help you figure out the OEK and the FDK options.
Marie, did you say that the email should have come from Christine Elegante that opened up the FDK grant? Because yes. I received one regarding the kindergarten codes and then a legislative summary, but I have not received this one. So
okay. I can resend that too. Absolutely. Yes.
Appreciate it.
Just jotting it on my paper right here. Okay, so we'll make sure that we resend that with our copy of our director's meeting so that that is front and center for everybody and you can get those funds applied for. Okay, we also wanted to let you know that USBE has posted their public education summary from this legislative session, aka the bill book. So if you would like to look at that, that has been posted, as well as the general session quick guide, and that's on the USBE website. We also have Jeffrey Van Holten here, and we'll be turning the time to him in just a few minutes, and he'll be doing a big legislative overview for us. So we're so glad to have him here, and then we also want to make you aware that the bill book, as well as the quick guide highlights, are available. And Jeff just threw that in chat. Thank you, Jeff. That's perfect. Our last few updates that we want you to be aware of. The Utah Systems Conference, their registration is now open. This will be June 15th and 16th down at the Utah Valley Convention Center. It's $75 for both days, which includes lunch, or if you want to do the virtual option, it's just $40 for that. There are national and local speakers and a whole bunch of different session strands that you can choose to attend. I'm really excited. We've been partnering up with USBE on the family engagement and community partners. And so we'll have some great charter resources to share there, as well as best practices across all the strands. So if that's something that you're interested in participating in, please make sure to get your registration done for that. Finally, we wanted to make you aware just of upcoming UAPCS trainings. They are currently doing a lunchtime policy series, and that is occurring on Wednesdays at noon. So if you're working on any policies for your school or just best practices with policies, that's a quick one. It's usually about a half-hour long to join in the lunchtime policy series. And then they also have their conference coming up. That is June 7th and 8th up at the north end. So MTSS is in Provo. The UAPCS conference, that's up in Layton. And so hopefully we'll see you at one or two of those conferences. And then finally, Upcoming trainings from the State Charter School Board. Today, our leadership training focus is cultivating educator efficacy. And we're so excited. We have Dr. Stephanie Spiker from our State Charter School Board who'll be joining us at 2:30 to lead us in that training. We also have this month, our board member training is all about strategy and planning. And so you're welcome to join us or to invite your board members. That's April 26th at 9 a.m. For our business administrators, we have a training all about fundraising, and that will be April 21st at noon. We have a special event coming up about contracts and procurement. That'll be April 28th, also at noon. And then for our teachers, we have an end of the year lesson planning training coming up April 28th at 4 p.m. So we love having you join us or catch us later on YouTube. And hopefully these trainings and things have been helpful. We are preparing a big year-end survey that we'll be sending out shortly, where you can give us your feedback and also request topics for the coming year, so we can continue to meet your needs and the needs of your school and your board members and your teachers and your business administrators, and really help everyone feel that they have the support they need to be successful. All right. If there are any questions on the in case you missed it section, please just let me know. Otherwise, that brings us to the beginning of our agenda. So we'll turn the time over to Jeffrey Van Holten, who is the USBE Director of Public Affairs, and he will be walking us through the legislative overview. So Jeffrey, I'm going to stop sharing and make sure that you have that ability, and you can take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Marie. It's good to see you, by the way. I am going to share this screen. You all let me know if you can see this. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. So I'm going to put all of your wonderful faces and named squares over here on this other screen that I'm looking away from. But Maria and Deborah, you are the two with your cameras on. So I will be looking over to see from your faces if I have put everyone to sleep or if we're like engaged. So if you two are feeling like, Jeff, this is super boring, just kind of do this and I will try and throw a joke in or something to keep it alive and entertaining. I'm also going to pull the chat up on the screen. I'll be bouncing back and forth. So Marie, if you want to help me check the chat, if there's any questions, you can jump in at any time and say, "Ooh, we have a question in the chat." And just
happy to do that for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very informal, so if you want to unmute and interrupt me, feel free. If you want to throw something in the chat and Marie can interrupt me with your question, great. I want to make sure that this is helpful for all of you. And my goal is to do this in 1 hour. How to sum a session in 1 hour. I feel like we could make a song from the musical Rent about, 525,600 minutes, but a legislative version, I don't know. But one game we will play today. So for those of you who are really, you had me at Rent. Excellent, Drew, I like you already. Whenever I talk about a bill, my question for all of you is going to be, if there is a song that comes to mind that reminds you of the bill, whether I'm talking about funds and you're like money, 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 ABBA, or whatever it is, throw it in the chat. I would be curious as to like what pop culture and what music tastes this group has. I'm sure some of your colleagues would really like to know what it is that's on your radio. So please feel free to throw in the chat anything there that strikes your fancy about music as it relates to the bill or the topic of the bill that we're going to go through. My goal is to go super fast. This is a very in-depth presentation. Thank you, Marie, for bringing up the bill book already. So the link is in the chat. If you open that link, you will notice as we're going through the slideshow that some of the pages in the bill book are directly translated into slides here. So the bill book is a really good comprehensive tool to see everything that happened this session, whether it passed or it did not. And of course, if you have questions, we even have points of contact at the state board down in the bill summary section of who at the state board would be the best person to call if you have a question about a particular bill. So please feel free to look at that book and we will make sure we get all of your questions answered. But I'm going to go lightning speed today on all of these slides. So this would definitely be my warning now. If you want me to stop and take more time, let me know, because this is going to be fire hose drinking today. You can't always get what you want. Yes, you always, I think, a theme most agencies would say about the session. Nobody walks away with the full list from Santa Claus, but I think there were some big wins. And one thing that I will preface this presentation with, there was a lot of conversation around the kind of the tone of the session toward education. There were some very interesting bills that came out, interesting, good or bad, depending on how you want to look at them. But I would say one thing to always judge a session by is judge a session by the bills that passed, not the bills that came out. There's a lot to be said about the bills that passed versus those that did not. So we've been trying to remind everyone there's nothing really in place where the leadership of legislature would prevent a bill from coming forward. That's something that each individual legislator has a right to do and to write a bill. But then the process begins, and the process weeds out the bills that are favorable versus not favorable in many different arenas. So I would say, as we go through this, keep your eyes on what did pass this session as a way to kind of judge the overall sense of what took place. With that, get your pop culture ready. I want to make sure you all are ready to like throw in the chat the songs that come to your mind when you hear about a bill. I'm going to go lightning speed, so stop me if I go too fast. First, there were 128 core education bills that we were tracking. Different groups define education bill more broadly or smaller, depending on which group you talk to. But we at the state board had 128 that we were really focused on. And of those 128, there were 83 that passed with just under a 65% passage rate. That's fairly high for education. Usually you'll see about 52 to 54% of the bills around education passing. So it was definitely a more education forward session in what came out at the end. Suzanne, you are channeling Schoolhouse Rock, which I just have to pause and say thank you. Schoolhouse Rock is the best part of all of this. I try really hard to incorporate that into any legislative training that I do, because it's fairly accurate for the Utah process as well. Utah is very closely modeled after the federal process, so there are lots of similarities there. So numbers at a glance for money. 6% increase on the WPU, a 9% total increase in the minimum school program for a total public education budget of $6.8 billion. I do want to point out that 6% is a record as far as we are aware. The highest ever WPU increase we saw was just a couple of years ago at 4%, and now this is at 6%. And we can unpack that more if you're interested in it, but I'm going to just keep whizzing on by unless you all stop me. So here on this slide, we have the hexagons that show the different kind of like overall, if we were to pick out like some of the highlights, $590 million of new funding on top of what we've been getting previously. There will be 28 different board rules that will either be amended or created based on what came out of this session. 6 new programs were created. There will be 4 new reports for the State Board of Education to give. There will be, unfortunately, 9 new reports for LEAs to give. I will preface that with most of those are program specific. So if you opt into the new grant program, for example, for a particular bill, there's typically some reporting requirements for that money. And then there are 12 RFPs, or requests for proposals, that the state board will go out to procurement for in relation to money that we received in the legislative session. This overall slide, I do have, I can show it here, hidden behind this screen, this implementation summary. This is essentially the breakdown of each of those numbers. So the 28 rules, for example, you can see where my cursor is. We highlight the bill they come from.
We're still seeing the numbers at a glance.
You are still seeing a different, thank you. Let me, because I am going to send a link to this document to Marie later. Let's do desktop sharing. That would be better. Now, do you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. So we did a breakdown. The board asked myself and Angie Stallings to do their study session in their board meeting last week. So if any of you caught that, this was kind of our cheat sheet for that study session. We've been receiving notes after that study session from those out in the field that feel like this would be a really useful document to kind of look at how those different numbers break down into here's all the rules we're going to be amending. Here are the new programs. Here's what the RFPs are. Here's what those new reports are. So I'm just showing this at a glance to let you know it's here. It's a little more broken down so you can kind of see the bill and which areas it affects in terms of implementation. And so I will send this to Marie in a PDF format and she can send it out to all of you as well, because I think this will be a useful tool. But I will shrink that down and put this back up. So you can kind of just know you can get a PDF later of how this all breaks down so that you can have a good sense of where these are all at. So enrollment growth in WPU, the big thing I'll highlight here is we're expecting just under 3,700 new students into the system this upcoming school year, and that was funded by the base budget in education. So I do want to highlight here some notable education stabilization funding distribution. So most of this came from House Bill 475, as you can see. The Education Stabilization Fund, just to kind of give a very quick high-level reminder of what that is. Last year, well, back in November of 2020, we had the constitutional amendment to the Utah Constitution to allow a little bit of new and different flexibility around the education fund itself. So some of social services can now use the education fund or the income tax revenue. With that said, there was a negotiation with the legislature and it's like, okay, well, if we're going to allow some non-education entities to now use the education fund, what are you going to give us in return? And so they passed House Bill 357 of the 2020 session. And what happened with that bill is it created what is called the Education Stabilization Fund. And there's essentially a formula that I won't dive into because I know enough to be dangerous. If I start to dive in deeper, then the BAs will be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they would be right. There's a formula out there that will take a chunk of the income tax revenue and set it aside in this new account called the Education Stabilization Fund. Think of it as kind of a rainy day savings account for education. We've never really had a very specific dedicated source for rainy day. We kind of share it in a larger sense of like there is an education rainy day fund, but that's shared with higher ed and with now social services as well. Anyone who can touch the education fund gets that access to that rainy day. This is just a rainy day for public ed only. And so that's what was created. And there's money that gets set aside. So we can access that money on a one-time basis every year if the legislature so chooses. And when I say one time, I mean all of this money is good for one fiscal year, and you may not get it the following fiscal year. So it's kind of just like think of it as like the bonus you get at the end of the year in the private sector, if those still exist. The legislature made this a one-time use only. And then of course, if there were bigger issues, it is ongoing money, but they issue it out one time. But if we had to dip into it for rainy days, we would have it. That account is sitting right now after 2 years of trying it out at about 270 million, just under $270 million. And this is the first year the legislature said, you know what, we'll let you have access to this for 1 year. And this is some of the larger ways that they decided to divvy out that money. So you have the 91.5 million for public ed capital and tech. You have the 50 million for the small school capital needs. And then you have the 64 million for the educator directed prep time, which is associated with House Bill 396. So those are the three largest chunks. And then there was a whole set of other funding that came out of this money all on a one-time basis as well. So I just want to make you all aware, there was a nice, huge distribution from this account for the first time this year. And this shows you this slide. I won't spend a lot of time on it, just kind of a little bit more how that money was spent out. And again, this is all one time, 1 year worth of funding. So a couple of funding highlights. This is where we hit, I always think money, money, money from ABBA. I don't know if there are other money related songs that you all would like to put in the chat that you find are more appropriate. Pink Floyd, that has come up multiple times. So thank you, Chris. I've heard that. I don't think I'm familiar with the Pink Floyd song, but now I have to go find it because everyone brings up Pink Floyd when I talk about money. We've got the 19.1 million for early literacy. We'll cover that in a bit. And the 12.2 for FullDay Kindergarten, which is a separate program from OEK. We'll cover that in a bit as well. And then you have Beverly Taylor Sorensen Art, got 4.2 million ongoing. So this is an ongoing increase to that program. There was 3.5 million ongoing for homeless teen centers. This is a new program. It's one of our 7 new programs that came out of this session. This is to mirror what Davis School District did at Clearfield High School, where they put a homeless center in the high school itself. It's not a center where the student would stay overnight per se, but they could stay longer after hours under supervision. Of course, there would be laundry on site if they needed a place to study. And it also serves as a resource center, so they would be able to find that student a place to sleep temporarily and more permanently. There's been a lot of success that Clearfield High has been seeing in this realm, especially with their McKinney-Vento students. So the legislature is now giving us 3.5 million to scale this out to other LEAs. And then we have the 1.5 million for the English language learner software. Next slide, we have computer science and Upstart, both got 8 million. You'll notice the asterisk next to them means part or all of that funding was one time. So all of the 8 million for computer science is still being funded by the legislature on a one-time basis. So I point that out because every year, if you're receiving money from this source for computer science integration, every year it is not guaranteed that we will have the money the following year. We've been working with the legislature to make that more permanent because it's now existed, I think, for 3 or 4 years. And we don't want to have established programs that suddenly disappear, especially something like computer science, which is so relevant for this moment moving on in the future. But we're going to continue to work with them to make sure that money is ongoing. But right now it's still one time. Upstart, half of it was one time, half of it was ongoing. So 4 million one time, 4 million ongoing. And that's just to expand the program offering. 3.2 million to SOEP, 3 million for reading software, and then 1.8 million one time again to give Adobe licenses to all of our secondary students, 7 through 12. Last funding slide here, the small district and charter school base funding was increased one time, the $8.6 million. This is that base funding for economy of scale to make sure that we can get the necessary resources, staff, et cetera, for our smaller schools and charter schools to be able to operate and offer full educational services. That's still one-time money. We're also working on trying to make that more ongoing. But we did receive 8.6 million one time for this next fiscal year to increase that. You have the 4 million local replacement lag elimination. You have the Education Innovation Program at 2.5 million one time. This is related to House Bill 386. We'll talk about that one. The 1.5 million is related to House Bill 273, which we'll cover. And then concurrent enrollment received 1.5 million. Apparently, we are seeing very large increases in our CE enrollment, which is great news. So just some batting averages for the board. I'm just doing a check. Maria and Deborah are still awake. Excellent. Okay. And now I see Brett as well at Team Ames. He's awake too. So thank you for having your cameras on so I can make sure that I haven't put you all to sleep. So this is how the board did. The board had 23 different bills or requests that they made of the legislature. 14 of those passed, 7 did not. The 7 that did not ran out of time. We didn't experience really any great opposition to any of the requests the board had. But time is the biggest killer of any bill. And then 2 of them, we realized after making the request, we could go a different route. So we didn't pursue the bills. So out of 21 actual bills, we got 14 through. Not our greatest year, but certainly not our worst. And the next slide just shows the board's positions. The board does not take a lot of positions on bills. They took a position on, I believe, 13 total. You can see here that on the left, the support side, they supported 10 bills and 9 of them made it. They opposed 3 and 2 of them failed, and the one that passed was significantly amended to meet more of what the board was hoping to see if that bill did pass. So the board's batting average is still going strong in terms of influence when it comes to taking positions on legislation. Okay, so I'm gonna pause, see if there's any questions. Yeah, feeling good? We're awake? Okay, we're gonna dive now into bill review. And I've got myself till 1:45, correct, Marie? Okay, beautiful. We're gonna go fast. So early literacy outcomes. This was the bill, Senate Bill 127. You just saw the $19.1 million was allocated for this bill. Roughly half of that was one-time money and half of it is ongoing. This bill is like a top to bottom complete change of how we handle early literacy. Typically, you don't see the legislature when they do systemic change. It is piecemealed over several sessions. It's not as common to see a whole systemic change in one bill in one session, but they chose to do that this year. And this is one of those moments where we decided to copy Mississippi. And I always point that out because people always take pause when they're like, wait, what? We copied Mississippi because Mississippi tends to be the one state, unfortunately, when it comes to outcomes and data that we can always count on. If we're in 49th, we'll always probably be at least in 49th in worst case scenario because Mississippi tends to be 50th. Bless their hearts. But they do have a tendency to not be the most highest performing state when it comes to a lot of the metrics that get reported out nationally. So then it definitely turned some heads when everyone said, let's copy Mississippi. Why would we copy Mississippi? Well, this bill basically is the Utah version, but a kind of a copy and paste and a little bit of a tweak of what Mississippi did when they did a systemic change. And they went from 50th in, I believe, the course of 2 or 3 years to 2nd place in the nation for early literacy outcomes. That's a dramatic improvement. And so, of course, people are taking note, and we have decided we're coming for 2nd place, Mississippi, or you know what, keep it and we'll be first. I don't know who is in first above Mississippi, but they better watch out because we're coming for 1st place, doing it the Utah way. So the idea here is the science of reading coming out of higher ed, and kind of an academia research kind of based approach of changing how we teach early literacy. This will require, first, we'll start with teachers and teacher prep. So those who are getting their education degree, it will require that they now become competent in the science of reading and they pass an assessment before receiving their bachelor's or master's degree in this area at all, so that they are competent in teaching the science of reading. So our new teachers will be ready to go. This also provides funding for training up your existing teachers. Some of you may have already started this with the LETRS training. LETRS is the training, the professional development training that's been used most widely right now to teach current teachers the science of reading. So this will provide more funding to get that scaled out even further. And then this will also provide funding for your principals or your charter school directors to manage the change. Oftentimes when we make a systemic shift on something, we forget to tell our leaders how to manage that. And we just kind of say, good luck, we hope you figure it out. But this is actually going to come with professional development funding for your principals and directors to actually manage the change over into the new way of teaching. So trying to give the scaffolding in all different directions. And last but certainly not least, the State Board of Education will now hire, I believe, 15 to somewhere between 15 and 30. I think 30 is the ideal. Literacy coaches that will be state board employees, but will be embedded within the field. So they will go out and provide coaching. They'll be assigned to specific schools or LEAs and really help with providing that coaching that is needed to get this teaching out there. Really excited about that ability to kind of go out and provide the coaching without having it be an expense for the LEAs themselves. It's one less FTE you would have to hire. and we will be able to kind of provide that support from the state level. So that is, it took a long time on that one. That's probably one of our most comprehensive bills that we have this session. And fingers crossed, 2 to 3 years from now, we're all going to have to ask ourselves, did we beat Mississippi?
So Maria, can I ask a question on this one, please?
Please.
This is Earl Porter from Timpanogos Academy. Can I ask a question about this one?
Please.
So the question is, the bill, I read the bill, and the bill is based on the science of reading. We already do a program here. It's not a program, it is a teaching method of reading. It's called Spalding Language Arts. It's a teaching method. It covers the science of reading as well. The bill doesn't say letters specifically. It talks about the science of reading. Is there going to be any leeway for other programs that teach the science of reading? Because there's, I don't know if there's others or not, but I know that our teachers are all certified in the Spalding method. It's not a curriculum. I want to make that clear. It is not a program. It's not a curriculum. It is a method or the science of reading. It's the writing road to reading. So it's a skeleton model. And I've been told by numerous, or at least from other departments of the state, that we would have to do letters. Is there any leeway as long as the program covers the science of reading? That's my main question, I guess.
It's an excellent question. So my understanding, and I could be wrong, so because again, I'm the generalist in the room, so I may be speaking for programmatic staff that might have a different vision, but my understanding, and I will preface this before I give my answer. I will double check my answer and send any corrections to Marie so she can send that out along with the document. So if I'm wrong, please stand by. But my understanding is there will be a request for proposal that will go out from the state board level, and letters will be a training that the board can offer to those who so opt in with the state contract paying for it. That doesn't prevent you necessarily from going out and using something as you just mentioned as well, if you would prefer at your own expense to go a different route to get to the science of reading if it's covered in a different type of training. I don't think you'd be prevented, but I think that would be something you would have to fund out of your own money. And the money that comes with this bill would be procuring a state level contract with potentially letters, but it could also be Spalding. It could be whomever wins the bid for the RFP at the end. My suspicion is it will probably end up being letters because there's a whole set of very specific things listed out in the bill that will need to be part of the RFP, but it could be others as well.
Yeah, I've asked that question to Sarah Webke and some others up there. They are very adamant that letters is the only program that will do it, but I honestly don't think they've looked into everything that could possibly be out there. I'm happy to pay for it ourselves if it's Spalding because we've already paid for it. And we've done this for years and our teachers are certified in that program. So I just wanted to have that. Also, is there something in the bill, the state goal that they put in there was above 70% at the end of third grade, I believe. Our average, I believe, is at 86% at the end of third grade. So the question is, why are we having schools that are already performing high on that goal change to something else, even though we're already above the state goal level? So will there be, I'm hoping there's something in there that says this is directed towards those that are performing well or something like that. Because you hate to change something that's working.
Well, that makes total sense. I can't necessarily answer specifically to that concern, but what I can promise is I will take that back and get an answer for you on what staff's plan is to address that issue. I think it's a very valid and fair question to be asking. And I know that the administrative rules, so this is one of the bills that has multiple administrative rules and multiple RFPs related to it because there's just so many pieces. I know that the administrative rules are currently starting to be drafted with the hope that either in the May or the June committee meetings of the board that the rules will come out. I will make sure that Marie is definitely noticed on that so that she can give you kind of a heads up like, hey, remember how we talked in that training about the early literacy program, and now the rules are out. Please read them and provide public comment. But I'll also get a very specific answer that I can send to Marie that she can send to all of you regarding that specific issue. I definitely, if you know of those, if you work at all with the vendors themselves, please let them know that the RFP is going to be going out soon. So they should definitely keep it on their radar so they can apply as well.
Okay, I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm just double checking the chat.
I was going to say there's a question in there, Jeffrey, about do they anticipate doing letters for 4th through 6th grade?
So currently right now, just for implementation of this bill, no. But that doesn't mean that they won't be able to, through the state contract, be able to procure something that might expand to a K-6 level of training. The bill doesn't require them to, though. So I can't say yes or no either way yet, because it kind of depends on what comes from the bid process for the RFP. It would be great if somebody can say, for the amount of money, not only can we do K3, but we'll do K6 trainings that we can offer. But that, I think, is an unknown at this point. But I will take the message back that it would be appreciated. I'm assuming by that question, Julie, that you wouldn't mind if 4 through 6 was included. But I will definitely make sure that that is a piece of feedback I provide as well.
Could I add one thing just a minute? If it's, I don't mind the 4 through 6, but would you also take back they can't, the level at which they did right now this year without any substitutes has been very harmful in many respects for trying to get teachers to training when we're not having classes covered and we lose the support we used to get for kids because we've had to pull out TAs.
I will definitely take that feedback back. And that is not the first time we've heard that, especially for our smaller LEAs, a lot of charters in some of our smaller districts. Coverage is the biggest issue with the letters training in particular, because it is very time intensive and it can eat into contract hours and some other issues. So that's something that staff is aware of and is trying to find solutions to, but I'll go back and make sure that that is doubled down on and that we remind everyone that's still an issue that we're hearing. And I'll let them know that charter directors definitely felt like it's lovely, but it's very difficult to implement when it comes to the coverage piece, and see if we can find some new solutions for you. And Melanie, I don't know if they've looked at Spalding or not. I have not heard, but I can find out. I will ask them. I'm sure they've heard of it, but I have no idea what all they're touching. Yep, and Aaron, it definitely is a huge time lift, and we've heard that from several. I will make sure that is clearly communicated to Dr. Brownson as well as Sarah Whipkey, as they will be overseeing the implementation with their staff on this particular bill.
When I did reach out and ask for some help and some suggestions, they offered just paying more money or stipends. There's a point at which additional money doesn't meet the needs and the level of stress that teachers are under. So just for what it's worth, my 2 cents.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate that. I will communicate that back to them as well. And Emily, thanks for your comment. Yep. It's definitely sounding like conceptually this bill is lovely, but I think there's a lot of concern from our smaller LEAs and a lot of in this group about the ability to implement, and it will be a burdensome implementation. So I will definitely take that feedback back and see what we can do in terms of problem solving. And we may reserve the right to come back to another meeting and maybe do some workshopping with all of you. And so if you have some thoughts on how to incorporate some solutions into what is presented in the bill, please feel free to send those my way or to Jennifer or to Sarah. We can definitely start workshopping on ways to make sure that this is least burdensome as possible. Thanks for the good feedback. This is exactly why we do this. It's very helpful. Any other thoughts before I move on? Nope. Any music that came to mind? Any songs about this? You can be candid and fun. You won't offend me. So don't hold back if you have any thoughts on songs that relate to this bill as you hear about it. But thank you, Emily, for the feedback. I will definitely take that in. And Marie, if it's possible, if I can get a transcript of the chat, usually it's saved somewhere, send that my way so I can pass it along as well. So please be candid with your feedback, because we will share the chat with the staff here at the State Board. With that, I will go to the next one. This next slide kind of shows the different areas and the different pieces of state code that are implicated in the implementation. But I think we've covered a good high level already on this. But if you have other questions, again, please put them in chat or just unmute and let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Okay. FullDay K, this is another big one. 12.2 million ongoing, not nearly as much as we had asked for, to get the full offering statewide for all of our LEAs to offer FullDay K to all those who would like it. We're looking more toward a $40 million ask, and they gave us 12.2. That gives you a sense of how much we might be able to accomplish with the 12.2. This particular program is going to prioritize what is deemed to be in the rule that just passed in the board meeting. And candidly, a rule I'm not overly familiar with because I was not the drafter of the rule. So I know again enough to be dangerous, but I would highlight, go and look at R277-489 from the board meeting that just happened last week. That has the implementation of this full bill in it. And the reason why the board took it on kind of out of sequence and out of its normal process, because usually it would go to a board committee, and then the following month, if it passed the committee, it would go to the full board. They went straight to the full board because we want to make sure that the process is ready for July 1 when the money is available. We did not want to wait. One thing I will highlight is there's going to be a priority for the schools who demonstrate the greatest need. That is fleshed out in more detail in that draft of the rules that just went out. And I would be very hesitant to attempt and explain how that went out, having not been the drafter. So, but know that that rule does have some details in it about how they're going to make that determination of who is the most at need for the demands of full-day kindergarten funding. We do have kind of
Jeffrey, can I add in there? There was a request, there was a training recording that's about an hour long that talks about this, that I'm going to resend to our charter directors, and they go into the details of what that funding formula looks like.
Thank you. Perfect. So there's a training out there already. So the link will be sent to you and you can kind of get the full rundown of the plan here. But just know that the legislature did behind the scenes make a promise. And, you know, I always say from my attorney background, get it in writing. And this was not in writing, but there is an understanding that there was a lot of disappointment from the field that the full 40 million was not provided, even though there was a lot of legislative support for this bill generally. The agreement with leadership from the legislature was, we will continue to give you an additional 12.2 for the next 3 to 4 years ongoing, so that we will scale up and you will eventually have the full $40 million pot that you would wanted. It'll just come over the course of the next 2 to 3 sessions. So we are hopeful that they make good on that promise. Of course, a lot of variables at play, election being just one. They have to be elected and still present to fulfill that promise. But we plan to be very vocal about reminding the legislators that they did make that promise to us. So hopefully in the next couple of years, this will be a fully funded program and everyone who wants access will have it. The next one is the school turnaround program revision. So we're doing some big notable bills first, notable just from the state board's perspective, just to give you the idea of the lens being used here. So the state board also requested this particular bill, Senate Bill 245, to kind of revamp and refresh our school turnaround program. I've been likening this to a kitchen remodel. To anyone who's got, you know, oak cabinets. Oak is not in. And we realized oak is no longer in. You know, white kitchens have been kind of the thing. Now we're kind of moving into like white kitchens with jewel tones. So, you know, we're just trying to keep up with the latest trends and redesign, do a little remodel refresh, get rid of the oak cabinets, if you will, when it comes to school turnaround. So what did we do? What is the oak cabinets we're getting rid of? A lot of it is the compulsory requirements to be part of school turnaround and the identification window, like how often we identified cohorts. So we're now moving to a 4-year cycle. So we will only identify once every 4 years for the lowest performing non-Title I schools. Those will be the only ones that will be required to participate every 4 years. And I believe we limited ourselves as well as to only taking, I think, up to maybe, I can't remember if it was a percentage or a number of 6 schools or whatnot. If there's a board member who's here, you can remind me, I forget. But the other 3 years, when we're not in the identification year, we now will have a voluntary process for non-Title I schools who feel like, we're on the brink. We're there, we could use some help. We don't want to get to the lowest performing schools. We would like some additional support and money for those additional supports. And so this now reimagines that idea and allows in those 3 years where we're not identifying, we will take a certain number of volunteers who want to proactively kind of get their school to the next level and away from that kind of falling onto the wrong side of the fence level. So we're really excited about this. This will be kind of a new way of approaching this. And as far as we know, no other state has reimagined their turnaround or improvement programs to have this voluntary component, but we're really hopeful that the ability to kind of opt in when it works for you and in a moment where you could use the additional resources, that will be a much more robust process and probably more well received. So if you're feeling like you're on the brink and you would like some additional supports, the full rollout of this should be happening just in time around July 1 is the goal from what I understand. So just know that if you're thinking maybe this could be us, be reaching out to Tracy Van Deventer if you know her with our School Turnaround and School Improvement Center. They're definitely looking for some schools who would like to pilot this voluntary process. Next, that should say House Bill 275. So I apologize, it's wrong House Bill. We already covered this in the funding piece. So this is that stabilization account that had almost $270 million in it and some big chunks. And then that bar graph that we already went over of how it was kind of distributed on a one-time basis. But this is the bill that accompanied those slides. House Bill 290, the school readiness amendments. This again relates to early learning, more on our preschool side. I'm not as familiar with this bill, and I know that this really just aligned a lot of the requirements with the existing standards that are already in place by the state boards. They do have some pre-K standards now that are out, and this kind of makes reference to those. Notable education bills on wellness. So Senate Bill 171 and House Bill 192. These are both bills that relate to curriculum. The first one, Senate Bill 171, I'm just going to pause for a minute, make sure we're all still awake, feeling good. Yep, Marie and Deborah, like, we're here. And Brett, you're looking at me, so I assume you're with us. Yep. And Julie, thank you. Any songs that have hit your mind so far? Anna Pesci, thank you. Any songs hitting your mind as you're like staying alive? Yes, Nathan, we are staying alive on wellness. And actually, because Nathan, you said staying alive, I'm actually going to jump to Senate Bill 192 first. I don't know if any of you ever received the CPR training, and Nathan, if this was your inspiration, but when you did CPR training, did any of you ever have to do the compressions while singing Staying Alive? Yep. That's what I assumed was your inspiration, Nathan. Because you just do the staying alive, and then like that determines when you do the compressions versus the breaths. I forget which direction it goes when you're singing the song, but Senate Bill 192 is CPR in schools. Hopefully this bill will change, will improve things, but hopefully for those of you who have secondary 7 through 12 as part of your charters, this shouldn't change a whole lot of what you're already doing. First, it requires CPR be taught in health class. The state board already requires that as a standard. So hopefully that is already happening because you're already required to do it. So the bill codified an existing practice. A second piece of this bill, it provides $470,000, not a ton of money. 270,000 of it is ongoing, and that money goes out in a grant form for procuring certified instructors, whether you are getting one of your teachers certified and paying for that, or whether you're contracting with emergency management system to come in and have, like, you know, the EMTs teach it to your students. We do give a grant for CPR instruction. Again, only $270,000 to go out to all secondary LEAs, but you can get some funding. This already existed before. If this sounds familiar to anyone, we used to have $200,000 in a grant that we did this for. And then in 2020, during the COVID cuts to the budget, that $200,000 was pulled away. So we haven't had it for a couple of years, and now they gave it back in this bill, and it's $270,000. So we gained a little bit of money. And the second piece of this bill is the $200,000 one time. So for the next year, we will have $200,000 we can give out for equipment and materials to teach CPR. Think the mannequins, or if there is any like instructional materials, workbooks or whatnot that you would use just specifically for CPR. Typically the funding has been used for the mannequins that you do the staying alive compressions on. So this would be secondary because health can be taught in 7th or 8th grade as well. So wherever health class is taught, because it needs to be taught once in 7 or 8, and then it needs to be taught again 9 through 12, or I believe it's actually 9 through 10. I forget what the law actually says, but it should be taught twice between 7 and 12. And if I'm messing that up, it may be 8th and 9th, and then again in like 10th and 11th, but it should be taught twice in secondary. So if you are offering it in a space where you have 7th graders, and if you have like a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school, you should be offering health class in that setting for students, and this would help with that. Senate Bill 171. Oh, and time is flying when we're having fun. Behavioral health curriculum program. So I'm looking for another song, but this is about behavioral health curriculum as it relates to trauma. The bill was essentially sought out by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute at the University of Utah. Really, their goal was to make sure that trauma-based behavioral health curriculum, or how to embed trauma-informed care into your existing instruction, is something that can be developed and created for the K-12 space. There's about $500,000 or $600,000 given with this bill to Huntsman Mental Health Institute to develop the curriculum in conjunction with the State Board of Education. The senator for this bill, Senator Thatcher, he expanded this to be behavioral health generally. There was a little back and forth during the session behind the scenes about like trauma specific informed curriculum is not behavioral health in a broader sense. So which do we mean? And Senator Thatcher said, I want it to be broader. So which was not the original intent of the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, but sometimes when you give a legislator an idea, you have to accept whatever comes your way after it is out there. So that's kind of what happened in this case. And they will be expanding out into behavioral health in a general sense. I believe that should probably be coming out and developed within the next year. So just be on the lookout for an offering if you want to opt in and have that available in your schools. Doing all right so far? Covered wellness. We're staying alive. Help by the Beatles. Chris, I like it. We've got some good song choices here. We got a good group. So far, some classic like 50s, 60s, and then, you know, we threw in some Pink Floyd. I'm getting a sense from this group where we're at on the musical spectrum, what we prefer. I'm still waiting for other genres to be tapped into. So anyone out there who loves country music, musicals, we haven't had a lot of musical songs. But just testing your pop culture knowledge out there. Just throw it in the chat. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Oh, Steve, good song. And the question is, what are you looking for? And hopefully we can find it in this presentation for you. This is support for teachers. So these 4 bills all cover support for teachers in some format. House Bill 315 is the incentive program if you teach in a high poverty school. Not all schools are participating in this program. It's existed, I think, since 2018 or 2019. And it may be even a little bit older than that. But if teachers in what is designated as a high poverty school are achieving certain outcome measures with their students in I believe it was an elementary school setting. Now I'm getting foggy on my details. I think it was 1 through 6. They could receive a stipend, some kind of financial incentive. The difference with this bill is kindergarten teachers were never part of the program. And there was just a big question of like, why did we cut out kindergarten? And the reason was they wanted to stick to just the compulsory ed grades. But we received a lot of requests that kindergarten teachers would make a lot of sense to add to this program. So that's all this bill does. It makes kindergarten teachers now eligible for this stipend if you are in what is deemed by the board rule and by this law a high poverty school. Old Slewfoot from 50s going 90 miles an hour, taking 30 feet per jump. Life of an educator in 2022. It is Life of an Educator. Brett, I agree. Beautiful, well done. I like this group. You got good taste. Good taste. The next one is epilepsy training. The bill title says it all. It's going to offer some funding and some training developed by the school board along with some Department of Health counterparts to give training to teachers on how to handle moments of epileptic shock or seizure, not shock. So we've received a lot of comments from our school nurses that we have teachers who have students who have epilepsy and they don't know what to do when they go into a seizure because they've never been trained, and you may not have a school nurse or a school nurse on site when it happens. So this is going to provide a kind of a little more one-size-fits-all training that can be viewed and give teachers at least a baseline on how to handle those situations when they come up. House Bill 184, this is just for this current school year still and next school year. If you want to change your school calendar, usually you have to give parents 90 days notice before the change can happen. This bill allows for this school year and next school year 14 days notice. So for the rest of this school year, if you need to make some switches to your school schedule, the idea here was for teacher professional development. You could add in those days and provide a 2-week notice of the schedule change for the rest of the school year if you still wanted to tack that on somewhere. And again, you'll be able to do that for the next school year only. Most of this in relation to mitigating issues because of the pandemic. Remains to be seen if that will be a permanent change. I suspect it won't be. But just know right now you can do 2-week notice, which gives you a little more flexibility with your schedule changes. And then House Bill 396 received a lot of press. This is a $64 million that gives teachers up to 32 hours of paid professional time that is self-directed. So this isn't money for all teachers sit in one room and get, a lecture through a PowerPoint or whatever it may be. This is self-directed. So if the teachers want to collaborate with other members of the same grade band and, collaborate and discuss students and whatnot, they could make that part of it. It's all self-directed, and it does include administrators as well. So there's a whole definition of the employees that would qualify for this paid professional time. The administrators, counselors, teachers are all included within that defined list. So just mark that down as funding that will be coming your way that you could use in a whole host of creative ways. And the rule for that, as Marie mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, R277-124 was already released. Actually, that was for the 10 million bonus, so scratch that thought. This is a separate pot of money. But the funding, rule for that will be coming out because this funding will be available starting next school year. So it'll be available on July 1. Checking the time, got 10 more minutes. We're gonna whiz through some of this. So innovation in education. This is what charters were designed for. So hopefully these bills will really speak to a lot of you in a fun and exciting way. House Bill 273 is innovation in civics. So we have 1.5 million. We'll be awarding up to 500,000 for the next 3 years, but they'll be ongoing for a 3-year pilot awards. So you would be given a per year chunk, whatever that is, if you apply for these funds. What are these funds for? Innovate in civics education. The innovation can take a whole host of different forms. The bill is fairly prescriptive. So I would say definitely make sure you check the bill, because there's a whole host of things that need to be covered in your innovation and in a particular order before you get to certain things. For example, you would need to cover things like the Constitution, the founding documents, the basis of a democratic republic, all of those types of things before you would get down to offering a service learning or hands-on experience in the innovation. Not that you can't, but hands-on piece of it. So if you feel like you've got some really innovative thinkers when it comes to your civic education teachers, or ideas from your particular charter around civic education and some innovation you would like to try, this is the program for you to apply for. The board rule just passed out of committee, kind of outlining the process for the applications, and will be in front of the full board for May. The public comment for the rule will then be in June, and it will be in effect in July is the hope. So come July, this application should be available and live for anyone who wants to apply for the funding. House Bill 386 is another kind of classroom-based innovation program. We received $2.5 million one time, with the idea of this being a 5-year pilot. So we will again spend $500,000 per year for the next 5 years for this program. I'm kind of likening this to like a donors choose type of a program, with some stipulations and conditions. So you do need to have, if you have a teacher who wants to innovate in the classroom settings, we're at the classroom level here, they would need to get a sign off from the principal or the director of the school, and then of course from the governing board of the charter. And if those two signed off on it, the teacher could qualify for up to $5,000 to implement their innovation plan. The innovation plan basically needs to center around alternative schedule or curriculum to teach a new and innovative way. And they would need to get 20 parents to consent, saying, if you approve this, my kid would be enrolled in that class. I would want my kid to sign up for that innovative course. You need 20 parents to say that in order to get the approval. That's one of the requirements. But if you get 20 parents and then the principal and the governing board sign off, the state board is allowed to provide up to $5,000 to that teacher to pay for the innovative curriculum or course that they want to teach. So that's exciting. Again, Representative Welton said his goal here was to unlock teachers. And one of the hopes here as well is that the alternative schedule or curriculum would require policy waivers, potentially state board rule waivers. And those would be things that could be sought through the approval process to make sure that the typical policies and the things that we handle on the day-to-day don't inhibit the innovation. So really kind of like charting new territory. I don't know if there's a Pink Floyd song for that. It feels like that group would have a song about, going off into space or something, trying something innovative. House Bill 437, I'm not going to cover too much. Bowie, yeah, of course, David Bowie. Chris, thank you. Of course, he would have some really good songs on this. House Bill 437, I'm not going to dive too deep into. It relates a little bit more to ULEAD, but if you interact a lot with ULEAD, this kind of gives ULEAD some new direction and marching orders in some things they need to accomplish. We're still in the innovation space. So now we're going to think at the school level, not the LEA level, but a school level, which for many of you may be one and the same. But if you have multiple school buildings or campuses within your charter, it would be just an individual school setting. But Senate Bill 191 is the innovation idea, but at the school level. So we as a school want to innovate in this new way. There might be governing board policy that prevents us from doing it. There might be state board rule that prevents us from doing this innovation. And this bill would require that once your plan is approved at your local board level, that any state board rule that gets in the way would be automatically waived. The state board does not have the ability to say no, unless there's a couple of areas, obviously, maintenance of effort and school safety and whatnot. The board could say no in very certain circumstances in terms of waiving board rule, but generally the idea here is, again, to unlock the school and remove the hurdles that get in the way of the school from innovating in new ways. The cool thing about this bill as well is it codifies what we've already been doing for COVID, where 35% of your restricted funds that have been allowed to be used in a more flexible way. This would codify that in a permanent setting. So if you get the approval for your innovation at the school level, 35% of the restricted funds for the school could be used to fund the innovation plan. So really cool and exciting ideas here again on the innovation side. And I feel like this group in particular, this is what you were born to do. So really excited to see what you all do with the previous bill, unlocking the teachers, and now also unlocking individual schools to see what kind of innovation we can come up with. This will require you lead. So Mikkel Weathers will be the report to for the LEAs. So if you don't know him and you plan to use this, you might want to get to know Mikkel Weathers a little bit, because ULEAD will be in charge of following up on how the progress is going with your innovation. Ground control to Major Tom. Chris and Nathan, you're really like bringing the game here today. That's a shout out to the rest of you as well. You're getting upstaged. You gotta like bring it. Senate Bill 244, Ethnic Studies Amendments. This creates an Ethnic Studies Commission with membership chosen by the House, the Senate, and the governor. The membership is really specific. They can't just choose anyone. They have to choose people with different types of background and experience and criteria. And this would then have that commission look at all of the standards that the board has out there for all core subject. So math, English, science, health, social studies. And the commission would make recommendations to the board on how to infuse ethnic studies within each course subject, including things like notable people from diverse backgrounds that have contributed to subject matters, so math and science and whatnot, literary contributions. The idea really here is there was a lot of conversation around critical race theory and a lot of the conversation around what is being taught around inclusivity, equity, diversity within our school setting. And this was a bipartisan effort from Democrats and Republicans in the legislature to create a commission that would really infuse that conversation in a healthy and a bipartisan way in informing what it is that's going to be taught in our schools, so that we do have an eye toward diversity, equity, inclusion, and those types of things, but keeping it within the space that has been laid out by the legislatures, as well as the board through R277328. So this bill does require that ethnic studies be infused. It's not an option, but it will be infused throughout all of our core standards. So we have taken a collective breath at the board, just because we know the standards process can be, it's a very robust and rigorous process, but we will need to open up all of the core subjects, even those that have just been updated, to infuse them with the recommendations that come from this commission. In terms of timeline, you probably won't see that happen for next school year. We don't have enough time to get all of that done before August. The commission has not even been formed yet. So I would imagine that at the earliest, you would see the standards being updated for the 23-24 school year at the earliest. And I believe we're supposed to have things done by August of 2024, according to the bill. So we have a little bit of time, but not a lot, actually. There's a lot that needs to happen before we get to all of that. But just be aware that your standards will all be updated to include ethnic studies throughout each one. And I'm going to pause here for a minute, Marie, because I'm at time and I don't want to like throw off your schedule. I will take your direction on how you would like me to proceed.
Yeah, why don't we wrap up in the next 2 to 3 minutes, Jeff?
Perfect.
Thank you.
In that case, I'm just going to say there's supports for students in these bills. The one I would point out is the early warning system. This has been used in a pilot program in Ogden, Provo, and Box Elder School District. And now the pilot program is being made permanent. We got more money. So if you're interested in this, I would encourage you to reach out to Erin Bruff from our data and statistics team, because they are looking at expanding this out to more LEAs, especially charter schools. We don't have a lot of charters participating in this program. Dropout prevention, if any of you have been forced into contracting at your own expense with a dropout prevention provider, this removes that requirement. So you do still have to come up with a dropout prevention plan if you fall below a certain level of your graduation rate, but you're no longer required to have to do it with a third party. You can do it internally as well. Educational language services provide all the services in the languages needed, and we, the board, are going to get more money to procure services. I'm just kind of going through period products in schools. I would just highlight this is required for all LEAs. The dispensers should be coming your way, donated by Traeger Grills and by the Larry H. Miller Foundation. And the products will be funded at the state level for the next 2 years, and then the LEAs will have to take on the cost after the next 2 years. And I'm also going to ask anyone throw in the chat anything you're seeing as I'm just quickly scrolling through these.
Hey, I have a quick question about that.
Please.
Can we had some issues where our kids were taking the stuff we had in the bathrooms and playing with them, especially if we put them in our gender neutral bathrooms. Do we have to have them in the bathrooms? Because currently we have a big basket that kids just grab whatever they need, just in the office. You don't have to ask anybody, they're just there. Is there going to be, I don't know.
That's a good question. And the bill requires every female and unisex bathroom in a K-12 building have the dispenser, and that the products be available in the bathroom and not kept in a different place. So that is required now by the law. I will point out, I don't see the bill on here, but Juneteenth is now a paid state holiday. So make sure that your BAs are aware that June 19th or the Monday following June 19th is now always going to be a paid state holiday. That's just something for your HR folks to be aware of. Sensitive materials in schools, I will quickly cover, and then I probably should just wrap it so I don't throw your schedule off, Marie. But this one is the one that it received a lot of press in terms of what is allowed in terms of materials on a school setting, not just the library, but school setting, the four walls of the building. A lot of people have looked at this as the library bill, like a bill on what's in the library, but it really technically is the full school building. So individual teachers' library is on top of your school library if you have one. This just incorporates already existing code on pornographic and indecent material. So the law that's existed for the last 15 years about pornographic and indecent material in the schools, this just kind of like says, by the way, we're going to double down and say, don't forget, you cannot do this in a school setting, and that is what a sensitive material is. So hopefully this doesn't change a whole lot of your practice, because you should have been doing it for the last 15 years anyway. But there's been a lot of questions on what is and is not this bill, and it doesn't really create anything new in terms of what can and cannot be there in relation to the last 15 years. And I'm just going to wrap it up. There's so many more things. As you can see, as I'm scrolling through, go through the bill book. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll put my email right now in the chat before I forget. Any last songs that come to mind when you think of how the session went this year, your personal feelings? I'd be curious. Pick a song to describe how you felt about the session. Simply the best. Me, not the session, Marie. You're so good. I do love, that's a good Tina Turner song. Love that one. Yes, Bill Book is a great resource, and I would say please use that. The link is further up in the chat. And yes, the dispensers will only be in female and unisex bathrooms, but they must be in every female and unisex bathroom in any building you have, K-12. Oh, look at all these good songs. Yes.
Jeff, I got a question on that. Currently, we have hygiene centers all the way around our building.
Mm-hmm.
If we put them in the bathroom, does that predispose that we have to pick up those other hygiene centers, or we can't, or can we go ahead and keep those centers as well as add the canisters in the bathroom?
I would say the latter. The law simply requires every female and unisex bathroom to have the dispenser. If you do something above and beyond that, with them being available in the office or whatnot, it doesn't prevent you from including them in other places. It just sets a floor of where they have to be. And I'll quickly send the Bill Book link one more time. Oh, no, Marie beat me to it.
I just got it in there for you. There was one other question. What about the kindergarten and first grade bathrooms? Do they need to have them as well?
Yes, it is K-12 in the bill. So it is every single female and unisex bathroom, K-12.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. We appreciate you running through this with us. And I'm sure if other questions come up, we can get you to join us again another time. And we sure appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all. Have a good day.
All right. We will turn our time next to Robert Austin, and he's going to be talking about civics education. So Robert, take it away.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate it. And it's nice to, it's a tough act to follow Jeff. He's got, you probably have all these earworms in your head now. You've got all these songs going through your head as well. Well, I'm here. I'm the humanities team coordinator for the State Board of Ed, and I am lucky, and my colleague Judy is with this as well. I'm lucky to be able to co-facilitate and work on the Utah Civic Learning Collaborative, which is an informal alliance of folks who care about civics education and really see that one of the primary purposes of public ed is to provide and reinforce the civic mission of schools and schooling. And we've got some really exciting things happening regarding civics education. As Jeff mentioned, House Bill 273 that was sponsored by Representative Dan Johnson, a real passion project of his. It's called Local Innovations in Civic Education Programs. And that's something that I really want to make sure that you're all aware of, because since charters and since public charter schools have a vision of innovation, this is a perfect opportunity to talk with you about thinking about the ways that you might be able to implement some great civics education initiatives in your schools and get funding to support that. And that's where the $1.5 million allocation for a 3-year pilot comes in with House Bill 273. So the idea, when we think about civics education and what that means, you have to think of it in I hope, a pretty expansive definition that includes anything that is going to prepare students to be able to participate in this democratic republic. And that means a whole range of skills and dispositions, many of them in Portrait of a Graduate, many of them just in the kinds of work you do on a regular basis. Even sorting and sifting reliable information and understanding misinformation and being able to have civil dialogue around complex issues. That's all a part of this vision of civics education. And of course, constitutional knowledge and you name it. So to that end, we in the Civic Learning Collaborative have been putting together a series of listening tours. And the listening tours have been opportunities for us to go out and meet with educators and administrators and other folks and really talk about the current state of affairs regarding civics education and the kinds of supports that will help us kind of make plans for and gin up support and excitement for both Dan Johnson's bill, but also for other civic initiatives. And Judy, if you'll probably beat me to it in terms of the link to the survey, but one of the things that we have for you right now is a survey link that we're going to put in the chat that is asking you to identify maybe some stakeholders in your schools that could be points of contact for conversations around civics education, and also to kind of get your thinking and feedback on some of the challenges that we all face right now, and some of the opportunities that we face, and some of the bright spots that we face. And we have 2 scheduled listening tours specifically for folks in public charter schools. I'm just pulling up the dates. We've got a secondary plan for a listening tour. It's just an hour-long conversation where we bring folks together, and we actually have allocated some funding. So we'll pay $50 for the teacher's time, because we really want to get their input, and we don't want to operate in a world where people don't get compensated for their time. So it's a novel idea, I know. It actually pay educators for their time, but we have May 2nd from 3:30 to 4:30, and we have May 11th from 4 to 5 for elementary teachers. So May 2nd and then May 11th. I'll put both of those dates in the chat as well to remind you. But the point really is for us all to kind of hear from one another about what we're facing regarding civics and civic education, and really seize the momentum that we have right now in this state of saying, you know what, we have an obligation at this point in history to really make sure that the civic aspect of public ed is being served, and that students are well prepared and ready to embrace the responsibilities of living in a republic. And so that's where we hope you will help us out by promoting the listening tours, encouraging people to participate, and also really thinking about the innovations grants that will be available. As soon as we get the rule and the RFP, we want to make sure we get your applications. One of the nice things about even the innovations grant is that we have a real focus on providing money and funding for professional learning and for professional growth. And you know, a lot of teachers will say, oh, if I only had the time, I would do X. If I only had the time, I'd create a more robust student government opportunity in my classroom. If I only had the time, I would do this. Well, the nice thing is we've got a chance here to buy some time with people with the grants that are available. So I've saw some of the questions in the chat. One of the questions was about, do we have a minimum grade level? And you know, we don't. I mean, elementary grades are absolutely welcome and encouraged to think about civic learning. We know that we build these kinds of habits and skills and dispositions early, and they'll last for students' lifetimes. So absolutely, there are great initiatives out there for kindergartners to think about their own rights and responsibilities. So anyway, so I'd love to, I know we're trying to keep things rolling, so I wanted to make sure you had that information. I'd love to, any other questions that people have as you do your Zoom marathons. I appreciate some time to be able to share with you. Judy, anything else I should add? Judy's the amazing organizer that co-facilitates with me with the Civic Learning Collaborative, and she.
No, Robert, I think you've covered it all. I will say that we already know, we have it on background that there's a lot of innovation going on in charter schools. And so, you know, this is also a chance for you to bring some of that forward or take something really exciting to scale. So we would really love to see a lot of charter schools applying for these grants.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Judy. Marie, thank you so much. And Jennifer, thanks for being able to squeeze us into your agendas.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here and Look forward to seeing some innovative ideas and continued growth. So
and we're sorry about putting the link in the chat for the survey. So because if people are multitasking, they might as well multitask about that. Because I know how I'm in Zooms. Like sometimes I'm like, all right, I'm there partially, but we appreciate your presence right now to kind of think about this together. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Thank you. You too. And we'll also make sure that link, looks like Jennifer said it was sent via email just now. We'll also include it with our recording. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, next we will turn the time over to Greg Cannell, and he is the remediation specialist with the State Charter School Board. And he's going to be talking about the service hours campaign and certifications training. So Greg, take it away.
Thank you, Marie. Let me share my screen here. All right, well, thank you. Can you hear me all?
Yes, we can hear you and see your PowerPoint.
Excellent, thank you, Marie. I'll first start off talking about our voluntary service hour campaign. So the State Charter School Board staff on the oversight team, we went ahead and looked at a few things, and we found that there was some need to do a campaign on voluntary service hours. So a campaign, just a little bit about what those are. It's initiated when we find something that's widespread that needs attention. Usually this is found through complaints. When there's a number of complaints that are about the same issue, we go ahead and take a look at that to make sure that it's not something widespread. In this case, we had received a number of complaints regarding service hours and the wording surrounding those hours. And so we went ahead and looked at all our schools in the portfolio, and we found that there was over 50% of the schools that had language that was not in line with Utah code. And so it was determined that a campaign was necessary. Instead of issuing notice concerns for every single one of these, we do a campaign which allows schools to go ahead and take care of these things first. And hopefully that cuts down the number of notice concerns we have to send out. So due to the number of schools that we found not in compliance with Utah code, a campaign was initiated. If you're wondering, I didn't receive one, that's because your school was fine. If you didn't receive a notification from us, then our review of your websites didn't find the language to be problematic. Here's a few of the examples of that language that we did find to be problematic. And you can kind of see why this wasn't allowed. So for instance, the school requires that each family provide 40 hours of service, or it might state something like time spent here qualified towards the 30 hours of volunteer service. Minimum volunteer hours each year are 40 for a 2-parent family, 20 for a 1-parent family. Parents are asked to contribute 40 hours per school year. If parents feel they're unable to volunteer, they may donate in lieu of these volunteer hours at a minimum price, or there are many ways to volunteer, and you can do monetary donation. Every $10 equals an hour. So to look at the codes to see why these weren't in line, Utah Code 53G 5-404 number 2 says a charter school may not charge tuition or fees except those fees normally charged by other public schools. And then in 53G 5-403, it is unlawful for any person affiliated with a charter school to demand or request any gift, donation, or contribution from a parent, teacher, employee, or other person affiliated with the charter school as a condition for employment or enrollment at the school or continued attendance at the school. So if we go back, looking at these different examples, these did not fall in line with our codes because the language surrounding these asks made it appear that these asks were then required to be a part of the charter school, and that's a commonly understood thing that we got a lot of complaints about. And so in talking with AEG Jones, we came up with some ideas that would help schools to be better in compliance because, as we all recognize, service hours are important for our charter schools as well as any public school to get parents to help volunteer. However, how you ask them can either make it mandatory or not mandatory. And as we're not allowed to charge any fees that aren't charged by other schools, mandatory hours of service are not allowed for charter schools. So we came up with a list of ideas that would help make the language surrounding voluntary service requests to be in line with those codes cited. Some of these examples are families are encouraged to. You could put a number of hours there. Please consider volunteering. We invite you to volunteer. Volunteering is strictly optional. We would hope that you consider working X number of hours. And then any other language that you can think of that would make the volunteer hours, that would make it clear that the volunteer hours are optional, would also be acceptable. Some of the areas that we commonly see that this language appears would be in the parent-student handbooks, in parent learning compacts, especially when parents are signing their names to these compacts, documents sent home to parents, enrollment documents, returning enrollment documents, PTO pages and handouts or your parent-teacher organizations, volunteer pages, and last but not least, your facts pages, so frequently asked questions. And a simple control, a control F will help you find the majority of these violations. If you do control F, look up the word volunteer. That's a pretty quick way to find the areas that need attention. So dates to be aware of: May 16th, 2022 at 12 p.m. is when this campaign terminates. So all schools that have received a notice via email to their board and director, please make sure that you have these changes in place before May 16th at 12 p.m. because after that date, we will go ahead and send out notice of concern to any school that is still using language that would violate those two previous codes cited. Now, the oversight team, we're happy to review your websites for violations to make sure that all the language is correct. Please reach out to us. Either Jenna or I will review that, and we will send you a list of things that we find that need to be changed or that need attention. We've already had a number of schools do that with us, and these schools have already been passed off from the campaign, and they don't need to worry about doing the campaign anymore because they've already been passed through. And so we would invite any schools that have received a letter from us and this rubric from us to go ahead and reach out to us if you're not sure that you've got everything changed or you just want us to take a look at it earlier than May 16th. We're more than happy to do that. In fact, we prefer it so that we don't have to worry about writing you a notice concern should you miss one. So please reach out to us. We're happy to do that for you. I don't know if there's any questions from anybody on this campaign, but I'm happy to answer any you may have.
Greg, there are no questions in the chat.
All right, we'll consider it good then. I will go ahead and move on to the next part here, which is the State Charter School Board's annual certifications for the 2022-2023 school year. So our the State Charter School Board has what we call certifications. These are part of our duty of annually reviewing schools, which you can find in 53G-5-205. Part of that review, we have our schools fill out these certifications. There's 17 different things that we have schools answer yes or no to. And there's also a comment box for any comments where a school might answer no to give a reason why they are unable to certify to that particular certification this year.
Greg, there's a comment that your volume keeps going in and out.
Okay. How is it now?
You sound good to me.
Okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what else to do about that. So hopefully the recording picks it up because I can hear you good too as well. So I'll just repeat what I said. So the State Charter School Board has certifications that we send out that we ask schools to complete every single year. There's 17 different questions that we ask on these certifications. The certifications are part of our annual review of our schools and our portfolio, and that code reference is 53G-5-205. The certifications need to be reviewed by both the board chair and the school's director. If only the director certifies these certifications, they will not be considered complete, and this would be a reason to receive a notice of concern should the board chair not complete them by the due date. So schools are required to answer openly and honestly. As I mentioned before, there is a comment section in case a school is unable to assure to one of these 17, they can go ahead and place in that comment section the reasons why they were unable to assure. We don't send those concerns out for missed metrics, although staff does do a review and works with the school until the item is completed, so that that school can next year answer yes to those assurances. The only exception to the no notice concern rule is if a dishonest response is received and the state charter school board certifies that the school did not respond honestly in the certification, then we would be sending the school a notice concern because of the dishonesty. So I'm going to run you through how to get to these certifications because each year we get questions on where to find them. The certifications are found in UCAP. So if you go to ucap.schools.utah.gov and you sign in, you're going to go to the menu button up in the left-hand corner.
Greg, the question is, will it be emailed or when will this open? Is that May 1st, correct?
It is May 1st. Yep, you're jumping ahead a few slides on me.
Oh, sorry.
And it will be emailed out by UCAP. There will be an automatic email, so make sure that you have your directors and your board chairs information and your board members information in UCAP that's all up to date. And that is actually one of the assurances that the school is assuring to, that the information for the board members, board chair, and director is correct in UCAP. So this would be a good time to do it prior to May 1st so that you receive the correct emails that you're supposed to be receiving. So after clicking on the menu button, you'll go down to Oversight and click on the SESB Annual Certifications. After clicking on that, you'll be given an opportunity to go ahead and fill out your certifications for this coming school year, or for this present school year. The director will fill out the certifications first. They'll go down the line where the little thumbs up signs are, and you'll click yes or no to the certification. And secondly, and then once that's done, you'll sign your name to it, which would be your username. And then when you hit submit, then the board chair will be able to go in and finalize those certifications. We suggest that you guys have a conversation so that if there is any things that you're looking at not being able to certify or that one of you don't feel comfortable certifying to, you guys can both come to an agreement on which way you're going to go and put any comments in should you need to do that. And I'll repeat one more time, the State Charter School Board needs both the board chair and the director's signature to consider these certifications complete. Without both those, the certification will not be considered complete and the school will receive a notice of concern for not having completed their certifications. We track the certifications. You can see right here in this picture, there is, we have a real-time number telling us how many schools are in progress, how many have started, how many have not started, and how many have finished. And so please get those done as soon as you can. They will open May 1st, 2022, and they will be closing at May 31st, 2022 at midnight. And so you have a month to get these completed, and that should be enough time for the board chair and the director to go through these and make sure that you have them all completed and signed off. If you have any questions about these, again, I'm happy to answer those questions for you. Jenna Magnetti, my teammate, also can answer those questions. We're happy to help you guys make sure that all your board members are in UCAP, as well as I'm sure the rest of staff is happy to do that as well. And so please don't hesitate to reach out. We cannot help you if you don't reach out to us. And so I will again open it up to any questions on the certifications, and I will also take any questions on the campaign if those have arrived. Well, Marie, I'm not hearing any, so I'm assuming everybody got that. So I will wait for emails in case anybody wants to reach out to me that way. So I will turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Greg. All right. Well, our last item on our agenda today is that we have our leadership training, and it's all about cultivating educator efficacy. And we will have Dr. Stephanie Spiker here, who is one of our state charter school board members, who will be leading that training for us. We are running a few minutes ahead of schedule, so we'll pause here if you need to use the restroom or grab a drink, and we should be able to hop back on maybe in about 5 minutes when she's here to join us. So take a break if you need to, grab a drink, use the restroom, and we will start up again in about 5 minutes. All right. Well, it looks like Dr. Spiker has joined us. And so, Dr. Spiker, just to fill you in, we are running a few minutes ahead of schedule. So we've had a nice,
I came on in a little early.
yeah,
Hurry,
wrapping up.
everybody.
No, don't apologize. We got our drinks. We used the restroom. Everybody stood up and stretched.
Awesome.
Maybe they were dancing. I know Jeff put a lot of earworms. He went through the legislative updates and had everyone say what songs it reminded them of. So it's been a great meeting. So we're glad you're here. So we, as everyone's coming back, we have Dr. Spiker here, and she's going to be talking about cultivating educator efficacy. It should be a really great training. And she is one of our state charter school board members. And so we are just grateful for her time and energy and efforts today to give us a great leadership training. So Stephanie, we'll turn it over to you. You should have screen sharing abilities, and awesome. I'll help monitor chat and just keep everything rolling. So
okay, great.
You're ready, take it away.
Okay, sounds great. I am just getting everything ready. I think I am good to go. And I think maybe we'll start. Let's see how I wanted just to get folks warmed up. I wasn't sure where we would be and all of that. So we'll do a little test here, Maria, make sure. Can you all see this drawing that's on the screen right now? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Brett, for that really great heads up. First, Marie, thank you for the great welcome. And it is so good to see all of you again. My name's Stephanie Spiker, and it's an honor really to have this time with you. And am I the last part of the meeting, Marie, or is there something at the end?
Yes, save the best for last.
Okay, so I get to go a little early, and which means maybe we'll end a little early. You know, we'll see as things go. So just to begin, as we're getting warmed up, if you all have the ability, I'm sharing on the screen right now a coloring page. And I know we're a couple years into this pandemic and being on Zoom, but I don't want to assume, but I'm going to guide you through this a little bit. But I'd like for us to just do a little bit of coloring together to get warmed up. If you have the ability and you're in front of your laptop and you're not, I know back in my director days, I was not just multitasking, it was probably, I don't even know, a jillion tasking sometimes. But right here at the top on your toolbar, or sorry, at the bottom on your toolbar, you should have an annotate choice to be able to choose. And on that, there is a choice where you can color and pick to be able to color. There's a format, and it's got a variety of different colors for that you can choose. I'm going to go ahead and pick the purple. And then from there, I should be able to kind of draw in. Awesome, Julie. So I just thought to get us warmed up, since we're going to be talking about cultivating efficacy, how we work together, thought maybe just go ahead and pick a square, go ahead and color in a little bit if you want, if you've got your favorite color or not. Also, if you feel like, there's a couple blank squares, if you want to go ahead and draw, maybe write a word in. How you feeling today? It's Monday after spring break for a lot of folks. I know that. And so if we could just take a moment or two as I continue to talk about, who I am, I'd love to be able to get this colored in. And then we'll formally dive into our presentation. And so feel free, everybody, go ahead and just color in, draw away. You can type in as you wish. And so, as I just share, as we're starting to color in on this and get started, as Marie mentioned, I'm a state charter school board member, and I've been on the state charter school board now. I'm in my second year. And I also was a charter school director in the state of Utah for 2 of our charter schools. Several years ago. I now am an assistant professor at Weber State University, and I teach in the teacher education department there, as well as our Women and Gender Studies program. And I think most importantly, well, not most importantly, but kind of most recently, is I have stepped into the role as the digital fluency faculty in residence. And part of that job is really helping faculty and staff across campus enhance their digital literacy skills for the betterment of all of our success. And this is great. I love how we're seeing this getting colored in. If you've got the ability and you're just joining us, or you're wondering what's happening as we're looking at the screen, we're just taking a little bit of time to color and draw in. I know for me, I need to take more time to pause. So I thought this would be a great way for us to just begin and spend some time coloring. As we're just doing this as well, if everybody wouldn't mind just giving me if you got the ability to go ahead and throw into the chat as well, just because I'm new to the meeting today, if you wouldn't mind if you take a break from coloring or whatever, if you're done coloring, when you get a moment, and just throw in your name and what school you're with, that would be great as well. This is just a couple introductory things to get us going today. Awesome. Well done, everybody. This is great. Fantastic. Awesome. Great to see the chat getting a little busy. It's always good to see when we're in the midst of our Zooms. Awesome, everybody. Great. I'm only going to probably spend about 1 more minute here in our coloring page. Continue to throw into the chat. Thanks, everybody. I'm just getting a sense of who's here, who's in the space. It's an honor to be here today. And as we're looking at this, and I deliberately picked this, there were lots of coloring pages to choose from. There is incredible power when we all come to a space with our ideas, our creativity, our insights, and our desire to learn. And you can see here that this, I like this page because it really it's very multidimensional. It is a variety of different boxes, which you could do, lead you to think a variety of different ways. So it really made me think about the job as a charter school director, because if that is not a job that is multidimensional, that can go in a lot of different ways, it takes lots of different shapes and sizes. So, whoops, that was my coloring. Let me get back here, just moving my chat around. Awesome. It's great to see some familiar names, everybody. I worked with many of you. It's so great to see you. As a side, oh, hi, Lois. As we are continuing to color in a little bit, I just put a little plug in. I just submitted a couple proposals for our annual Utah Association of Public Charter Schools conference coming up in June. That's always a great place for us to come together and be in person. So know that that's coming. Awesome. It's great to see all of you. Awesome. Thanks for sharing all of you, everything that's going on in the chat. Fantastic. Okay. I am, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear this, everybody. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm honoring everybody's pictures. I'm going to take a quick screenshot because I know that, sometimes it's very difficult here when I have to stop sharing and clear. And we're going to just clear viewers' drawings. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a second so I can minimize that one and get up our next screen. So I was really excited actually today when Marie asked me, when I saw this as a potential topic to be able to talk about. One, because as a school director, it became very clear to me the importance of efficacy, not only for our students, but for our teachers. And then it made me think so much about my work when I was a teacher myself. Please don't hesitate to, everyone. I'm going to be asking questions as we go through today. I'll be mindful. I think I'll hold on breakout rooms just because of the timing, and again, of the dismissal is upon us the first day after spring break. So, although maybe that's a good reason. You can be like, hey, everybody, I'm in a Zoom. You can't bug me right now. I can't go out there at pickup duty. But please use the chat. Unmute, please participate in any way that you would like. And so, as I was saying, this notion of educator efficacy and collective efficacy is one that I think many of us are familiar with. We might have learned about it back in our education programs. It even is something that we have strived for and definitely think about as leaders. I think it is more important and ever more in our forefront of our minds coming out of COVID, because we are hearing more and more of the need for our teachers to find the ability and the strength and the power and what happens when we work together. So today I want to focus on 3 central questions. The first one being, what is culminating educator efficacy? And why does efficacy even matter? Second, how can we harness the power of our efficacy to achieve our goals? I know that sounds pretty grandiose, but I definitely believe that. And then lastly, what can administrators, school leaders, and teachers, and all of our stakeholders do to cultivate the belief, acceptance, and utilization of educator efficacy? And really, what does this look like in practice? Because we can talk about the fact that we're building efficacy, that we work as a collective unit towards the betterment of success, but the reality is, what does this look like in practice? So we're going to talk about that today. So to begin, if we could just, and I'd love it if some folks, you could throw it into the chat. Let's just start with a definition. And when we think about this, as I say educator efficacy, you might know teacher efficacy, what does educator efficacy mean? So just kind of throw out whatever you think that means. And Marie, I'm just running, I want to grab a book that I wanted to show everybody. So I'm jumping up real quick as folks are throwing that into the chat. Okay.
Perfect, thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, great. You think you're all prepared, and then, okay. So let's go ahead and just what do you think, what does it mean to have efficacy as an educator? Well, go ahead and you can put your ideas into the chat. What do you think that means? Awesome, great. Confidence level in our ability to assist students reach success. Great. Teachers that are effective. Yep. Yeah, definitely, Lindsay. Yeah, the belief that we can do it. I know we've been saying that a lot lately. And we'll talk again, how do we put more, not so it's just not, words. Yeah, excellent. Meeting the academic needs of all of our students. Yes, being able to produce results, effective, efficient, research-based teaching and learning. Yeah, excellent. When I think about this, even in my, as I think about this in my, I think about this in my own life. So let's start with self-efficacy. And these are some general definitions: belief in one's capabilities to organize and execute a course of action required to produce a given attainment. So that goal, this idea. Oops. When we talk about educator efficacy, this is the extent, and many of you commented this on the chat, the extent to which teachers feel confident that they are capable of bringing about learning outcomes. that teachers feel confident that they are capable. And then lastly, when we talk about efficacy, and especially in schools, we often talk about the power of the collective teacher efficacy. And this is the perceptions of teachers as a whole, that the efforts of the faculty have a positive effect on students. And I want us just to kind of sit in that. And I want you to think about times in your career where you have felt that, efficacy. I know for me, they are not as plentiful as I would like. When I have been in moments, though, where I have felt the power of collective efficacy, the synergy is palpable. You know, you can feel it with the people that you work with. You can feel that what you are doing truly is making a difference. So as school leaders, we need to ask ourselves is, how do I cultivate this? Because when our teachers and we feel that power, like you all probably know, and I hope this is the case in every single one of your schools right now, that you can walk into your buildings, virtual, or even you walk online, right? Because some of you are in virtual spaces. So you are walking online, you are walking into your physical spaces, and you can feel it. You can feel the synergy in a learning environment when it is there. So how do we cultivate that efficacy? How do we cultivate a space where we know that teachers believe that students can learn? And then in turn, guess what? And we know the students then believe that they can learn as well. And I also want you to think about, there have been times where we have not been in those spaces, where potentially we have been in a space that it has actually, I often, and this makes me a little emotional, because I have worked in environments and I have been in schools that have brought out the worst in me, that have brought out things in me as a teacher that I did not want ever to replicate. And then when I became a leader, I wanted to be sure that I was in a cultivation place, a place where we could grow this efficacy. And I will say, feel free, use the chat. Think about those places that you've been and maybe ask yourself, you know, is my school currently that place? Okay, I'm going to, I want to share this as a short clip. It's about 3 minutes that I really like. Hopefully if it lags, Marie, just give me a heads up and then we'll pause it and folks can watch it on their own. But I think this should work. I think this should work. And I think I shared for screen sound. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Collective teacher efficacy refers to a group of teachers' beliefs. It could be a team of teachers on staff at a school or an entire staff, but it refers to a belief in their ability to influence student outcomes, including those who are unmotivated, disengaged, or disadvantaged. So teachers' beliefs are very powerful because they guide our actions, they guide our behavior, the effort that we put forth, how much we persist, especially when faced with difficult challenges. So it's really important to openly share, discuss, and collectively develop beliefs about our ability to impact student outcomes. If educators' realities are filtered through the belief that there's very little they can do to influence student outcomes, then those beliefs will be manifested in their practice. But I think one of the most important aspects of our beliefs is the idea that we hold expectations for students. And what we find in the research is when teachers hold high expectations, they have a greater sense of collective teacher efficacy. And so the relationship between those two ideas is really important. But most importantly, when teachers hold high expectations, they also help students to believe that they can do well. And so they raise students' expectations of themselves. So where collective efficacy is present, staffs are more likely to put forth greater effort and persistence. They're more likely to attend to students who are struggling and need extra support. They're more likely also to increase time on task and encourage parental involvement because they have the belief that they're able to achieve the outcomes they want, so they welcome parents into the school environment. In addition, when collective efficacy is present, staffs are more likely to foster learner autonomy. They're more likely to believe that they can decrease disruptive behavior, and therefore they do so. They have higher expectations of students.
Great. Okay. So I like that video. It's just move fast forward there. I like that video because it just is a great synopsis of what of some of what we've already been talking about, and the benefits of what we can see of that the collective efficacy when it is present in our schools. Many of us are familiar with John Hattie's research. I come back to this often because as a researcher or professor at Weber State, I find great power, especially in meta-analysis or when I look at several studies to give me the data that I need to, so people just doesn't think like that this is just hippie talk. A bunch of teachers just, let's work together. This is bigger than that, right? This is when we talk about collective teacher efficacy, this really makes a difference because we can see that the belief that we can make a difference is strongly, positively correlated with student achievement. A school staff that believes it can collectively accomplish great things is vital for the health of a school. And if they believe that they can make a positive difference, then most likely they will. We often talk about this even in our, in our personal lives as, thinking about vision boards or action boards or, speaking what you want to see. So I want us to take a moment and now let's think about, what actions help us create pathways to be successful. What are the actions that we specifically can take that allow us as leaders to build this efficacy with our staff? So we can build instructional knowledge and skills with our faculty. We can create opportunities for teachers to collaboratively share skills and expertise, which is really powerful. Not just experience, but that we give power to who they are as professionals. We can interpret results and provide actionable feedback on teachers' performance. And I will say, I know this is hard, especially when we're in real time where we want to follow up and then something happens in school that we have to navigate and manage, and then we're not able to meet with a teacher to give that powerful feedback. So we have to really think deeply about how do we create those mechanisms to make sure that that is a priority. And then we need to be sure to involve teachers in school decision-making. Because again, the research shows that educators with a strong sense of efficacy, they put more effort into planning their lessons, are more open to new ideas, and persevere in the face of new challenges and handle stress and cope in difficult situations. So I want to put something out to all of you that might be, and this is hard for all of us as leaders to think about, especially for that third point about perseverance. If the last few years have not been a test of our school cultures, I don't know what has. I have had the opportunity to talk to numerous principals and school directors over the last several years that have talked about how their schools are thriving, not just surviving, but because of the efficacy that was present in the building and how that was continued to be fostered at a time of chaos and strife. I also know that it is very difficult and it takes time to create those powerful cultures. But as leaders, we have to sit back and ask ourselves, where is my staff? How are they feeling? How are they able to handle with stress and deal with difficult situations? Are they open to new ideas? For heaven's sake, 3 years ago, if somebody would have told me, I would have been sitting here asking people to doodle on a Zoom call, I would have been like, you are out of your mind. You know what I'm saying? Talk about being open to new ideas. And part of that is, gratefully, I'm working at an institution that made me feel confident, helped me feel confident, gave me the tools to do so. And I work with others that allowed me to do that. So I'm asking all of you to be really reflective right now, especially, I know we're wrapping up a school year, but as we're moving into the 2022-23 school year, it's an opportunity to think about, how are you building a culture built on efficacy? So again, pulling from your experience and your expertise, I want you to think about, how are you building a collaborative culture? How are you building collaborative teams? And then how can you draw from your knowledge and your experience to connect what you already know? You all are amazing leaders. I know, because you're tenacious. You have made it to April, what is today? 11th, in the big picture. And I'm joking, but also not, right? That you have the ability to then think really deeply about, how then can I take what I know and create a collaborative school culture that really helps cultivate educator efficacy? Because when my educators are working together to cultivate their efficacy, we know that then it will carry on down to the students. And we have then a school culture that is incredibly built on a desire to help everyone grow and move towards success. So I wanted to focus on one of the and I know this is a little cliche, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of the presentation. But one of the things that I think is really important, and that we often give lip service to, is trust. Part of my background, I was an outdoor educator. I worked for Outward Bound for many years. I thought this picture was hysterical because it brought me back to the days where we were like, yeah, I'll touch you. I don't mind getting really close to you. I think we're there again, but how can we be really creative with team building activities? But, outside of that, when we want to create a culture built on efficacy, trust is the most critical factor. Trust comes first. And we define trust as the willingness to be vulnerable to another. I don't know, maybe by a show of hands, or feel free to throw into the chat if anybody's reading Brene Brown's latest book, Atlas of the Heart. Whoop, whoop. I'm totally down. I'm reading it right now as part of a book club. And I know so many of her books are about being vulnerable, but vulnerable as a leader. In fact, one of the other ones that's in my book stack that I should probably share with you in a minute is Dare to Lead. That is another fantastic book that is, oh my gosh, helped me just has helped me as a leader. So when we think about trust, why is trust critical to building efficacy? It's because I like these 5 facets, okay? These 5 facets of trust. 1, benevolence, that I'm in an environment that's caring. People want me to succeed, and I want others to succeed. It truly comes from a place of goodwill. In Atlas of the Heart, Brene Brown talks about, there are different types of comparison. I want to be benevolent. I want to shower you with my desire for success, because I know that it will come back to me. Secondly, honesty, right? Having integrity and being truthful. Third, being open, willingness to listen and consider others' opinions, feelings, and ideas. And I know schools are being pushed to the brink of that right now in terms of how are we creating open environments where we can listen to each other with openness and consider others' ideas. Fourth, reliability. You know you can count on me, right? Teachers need to know that they can count on you as the leader. And I will say that again, teachers need to know that they can count on you as the leader. And sometimes it's okay to be honest and open. Not sometimes, most of the time, it is okay to be honest and open when you might not be as reliable as you need to be, because we are human. And that is how we build those trust networks. And then lastly, and I will say this, this is critical, and we all know this as school directors, we have got to be competent. If we are not good at our job, the price is insurmountable. And so in order to really build a culture, to cultivate efficacy, trust is central. It's critical to the work that we do as leaders. So having trust, having a communal culture is just the beginning, though, in finding our way, in building efficacy. So these are some questions that you can ask yourself as a leader. And I like all of these. And we're going to start with the one on the very top left. Again, please feel free to unmute and feel free to raise your hand because my Zoom screen is a little minimized, or throw anything into the chat. Because I know all of you are an incredible wealth of knowledge as well. In fact, I know this might sound a little silly, but one of the things I do miss, there are a few things I miss about being a school director. I know you're like, oh, yeah, yes, there are many things. And one of them is the directors' meetings. I really missed coming, and the camaraderie. And if you think about the efficacy that's built in that group that you all can feel as directors. So questions that we can ask ourselves. First and foremost, what questions are we asking about cultivating educator efficacy? So even as a leader, first and foremost, am I asking these questions? Am I caring enough about how I am building the capacity within my faculty so they feel that they can be success at what they're doing? Secondly, and I'm just going to move through across the top row, what unifies everyone to ensure each student's opportunity for success? And I would say as a school, you should be able to narrow this down to like 1 or 2 words or a statement. Third, how do we foster a culture of collaboration? Bottom row, 4th question. What process or structures are in place to support the development of collective educator efficacy? Right? So going back to really thinking about how am I supporting teachers in their growth? 5th, what is our message with teachers about instruction for student learning? This is on there because is it about growth and development? Or is it more about this is the final score that we need to get? And then lastly, how might we coach, right? The building, all the folks within our building, so principals, instructional coaches, teacher leaders, et cetera, right? To build and to cultivate that educator efficacy. So these questions are critical that we can ask ourselves. So why does it matter? And this was mentioned in the video that we watched just a little bit ago. But if we need data and we need research-based data or research-based information to help us, these are more positive attitudes toward professional learning opportunities and experiences. Yes, that would be nice. Deeper implementation of evidence-based instructional strategies. A stronger focus on academic pursuits. And students are less likely to be suspended or removed from classrooms as a result of misbehavior. And that was also mentioned in the video. I know that as a director, I was seeking ways to help me minimize those situations that were happening in school, and creating a culture built on efficacy definitely helps mitigate some of those behavior situations. Okay, so I want to talk about now, how do we actually do this? What are some sources? And I want you to again, be in a headspace where you're asking yourself these questions on what am I doing currently in my school, or how can I do this come the fall to really cultivate educator efficacy? So first, how are you creating mastery experiences? So are you creating experiences for your teachers where they can feel success, where they feel and they know that they have been a success? Secondly, are you creating and supporting vicarious experiences, which means that, that it's modeling that I can see others around me being successful, right? That I can see others attaining things that I want. And then we have to make sure that we have the mechanisms to support teachers so they can gain the skills they need to become to gain that mastery. But I need to see others as well. It's like, I think about it every time I go skiing, which was just ended this past weekend, but I spent the last 4 months, I love to ski up at Powder Mountain. I think I'm a pretty good skier. And then somebody passes me and I'm like, holy macaronis, that person just, man, I'm going to follow them down the mountain, right? I'm going to follow them down the mountain and I can watch them be successful. And then notice that social persuasion, right? Their healthy peer pressure is good. It is good. It builds our efficacy. That when and this comes back to having trust, trustworthy sources express confidence. When people around me push me that I trust, it helps me. When somebody says, yes, Steph, come on, you can ski that black diamond. Or sure, Steph, you can go walk into that kindergarten classroom. Yikes, right? Yes, you can. And we do that also by providing specific feedback and support. And then lastly, how do we cultivate this? Is by providing that effective state. Again, how are we creating experiences where people can actually have a physiological experience where I'm having an emotional response? We know that when I have a heightened, and this is even in good stress, but when I feel successful, I feel valued, I feel validated, I feel like I'm learning, and I'm having these physiological experiences, I'm more likely to want to contribute to the cultivation of that efficacy. So thinking about, as a leader, I want you to think about the mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, the social persuasion, and the effective state, and how that is present within your school. Okay, and I just have a couple last things that I want to wrap up with. Be intentional. So, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here for just a sec, because I want to share a book here that I think you can. I'm going to take off my background here for just a second. Is that often at the beginning of the year, we as leaders will say, we're going to choose this as our theme. This is going to be what we're going to do. This is going to be our focus area. But the reality is that sometimes that is just in talk. And part of that is not because we don't want to do it. It's just that sometimes it's so hard. It's so hard for us to do it. So when we talk about, if you want to be and have a school built on efficacy, think deeply about it. Just be intentional. And so I just wanted to share, this is why I stopped sharing my background for a minute. I just happened to stumble across this book. Now, I don't know about all of you, but sometimes books kind of show up in your life when you need them. And so I've mentioned a couple, the Atlas of the Heart, Dare to Lead. Those are my, I am a Brene Brown fangirl. I will admit it. But this one came across my path recently, like last month. and it was an email I got to review a desk copy. And the authors are, I'll put Mike Fullen and Mark Edwards. And this book is called Spirit Work and the Art of Collaboration. And it really, and I know being in Utah, this is no pun intended, it called to me in the name of the book. But why it called to me is because I have been really seeking, as I've been talking to all my dear friends that are currently still teaching, myself as a teacher educator, I keep thinking about what do we do now? What happens now? Because education looks and feels completely different than it did 3 years ago. And so much of this book is about, it's not our religiosity, but the spirit that's within all of us and all of the living things on this planet, and how we work together for the betterment of who we are as humans. And I wanted to read, I wanted to read an excerpt to all of you from this book, and I'm still, oh, you can see I'm still like underlining, writing in books. But this excerpt really called to me, and it made me think about all of you. And in preparation for this presentation, I wanted to share this. Who are all of you as leaders? What does it mean to be a school director now? So these authors say that you are an action-oriented modern pioneer. You're not necessarily superhuman, but you're an individual with a deep sense of human purpose. Indeed, you can envision human evolution. As we seek and study, we sense that all that are moving around us and all that we're engaged in education, we could call spirit work. The word spirit has many origins, but it can be understood through the Latin spiritus. It means breathe life into. And somewhere along the line, I had never heard that, right? Spiritus, breathe life into. So when we're thinking about as educators, we are breathing life. We are breathing life into our buildings, into our students, into our teachers. It is associated with the soul, the essence of what it means to be fully human, the caring of ourselves, others, and the universe. And really what we are teaching, and I have it circled, is learned hopefulness. Learned hopefulness. And when I think about efficacy, that is so much of what I think about and what it means to be intentional. Is that learned hopefulness, and that we can achieve if we believe. As leaders, we have incredible opportunity to cultivate the efficacy that's needed for all in our buildings to feel successful. So I want to thank you all for this time and giving me this opportunity. I am here for questions, comments. If you'd like to share things that have worked in your school, Marie, if there's any, again, things to add, I'm mindful we started about 10 minutes early, so I'm mindful of folks here. And again, it's such an honor to be able to speak to this group. And I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We have loved having you here. Thank you for being present at director's meeting. As Dr. Spiker said, she's happy to stay on and talk or answer questions. I'll stay on as well. If you have things you want to bring up, we can. Otherwise, have a great afternoon, and we will see you for our May director's meeting.